Harvey, a humble nurse's aide, admitted to killing 37 people in 1987 and entered a plea of guilty. The gentle-faced man, motivated by a God complex, poisoned hospital victims over the course of 3 decades. As he viewed it, he was an angel of death who helped the terminally ill by ending their lives with dignity. Actually, he was a heartless murderer who poisoned the defenseless with arsenic and cyanide. On April 15, 1952, Donald Harvey entered this world somewhere close to Cincinnati, Ohio. The family soon after relocated to the Appalachian town of Booneville, Kentucky. Harvey was up in poverty in the foothills of eastern Kentucky, where he was allegedly abused by his uncle and a neighbor when he was only 4 years old. The bright kid would rather hang out with teachers and staff than classmates on the school playground. His teachers regarded him highly, but his students felt distant from him. Harvey left school after the 9th grade but later received his GED via mail. Unable to find work, young Harvey traveled to Kentucky to be with his dying grandfather. This is where his morbid curiosity first surfaced. After frequenting the facility, he was eventually asked to join the staff as an orderly. He administered medication and attended to the patient's other medical and emotional needs. He was consumed by his newfound sense of superiority over the defenseless as he took charge of all their daily survival rituals. In an interview in 2003, he said, "Well, control and power's about the same thing, isn't it? When you have command over something, I believe it means you also have the authority to make that thing happen." 2 weeks into his job, on May 30, 1970, Harvey committed his first murder. A stroke victim was suffocated by him using a pillow. He then proceeded to suffocate 13 more people, connect them to empty oxygen tanks, and use a wire hanger as a catheter to impale one of them. However, no one suspected Harvey because most of his victims were elderly or sick. In the same interview, Harvey added that the doctors were too preoccupied and understaffed to take any notice. It's possible that a patient could pass away while their family doctor was out of the office because everyone was so busy. A local would be enlisted for that task. They just gave him the death sentence and transported him to the funeral home. Since this was the norm, a crazed murderer was able to murder hundreds of patients with whatever means he could get his hands on. Harvey enjoyed killing with various poisons, including cyanide, arsenic, rat poison, and petroleum distillates. He added these synthetic substances to baked goods, fruit drinks, and other edibles. He would also smother his victims with pillows or deliberately deplete their oxygen supplies. In the meantime, Harvey's sadness and suicidal ideation persisted. Fortunately, he crossed up with a mortician named Vernon Midden, who educated him in the ways of the supernatural and the inner workings of the human body. After things between them worsened, he entertained thoughts of having the Undertaker embalmed while still alive. Despite our increased anatomical understanding, we kept killing the sick and elderly. Some, he said, were mercy killings because the victims were in such bad shape. Then Harvey made an attempt on his own life. Attempting suicide in 1971, he lit the bathroom on fire in a vacant flat in his building. He ended up getting arrested and having to fork up $50 in fine money. Later that year, he attempted suicide with NyQuil and was again imprisoned on burglary charges in his own building. He was intoxicated and boasted to the police that he had killed 15 people at Marymount Hospital. but they didn't believe him. His third attempt at suicide followed his enlistment in the Air Force, from which he was swiftly discharged. Through all of this, Harvey's involvement with the occult grew, and he eventually joined a local group. He dated various men, and when he began to worry that one of them could leave him, he killed them with poison. His victim list included a friend, neighbor, and father. He even poisoned his roommate so he couldn't leave the flat. Harvey even killed one of his ex-boyfriends while he was poisoning, smothering, and otherwise mistreating people at hospitals all around Kentucky and Ohio. Nearly a decade passed before a lucky autopsy led to the arrest of the Angel of Death. On March 1, 1987, Mr. John Powell was seriously injured in a motorbike accident and taken to the hospital. Sometime later, he passed away in his hospital bed. During the course of a standard autopsy on Powell's stomach, the attending physician detected the odor of cyanide. Powell's death was eventually determined to have been caused by poisoning rather than the motorbike accident. An attending nurse by profession, Harvey was an easy target for the investigation. After being taken in for interrogation after refusing a lie detector, Harvey admitted to killing Powell. He claimed that he did it out of compassion for Powell and his loved ones. Although Harvey did not admit to committing any other murders, evidence accumulated that he was the nurse on duty for dozens of additional deaths at hospitals in both Kentucky and Ohio. Harvey was found guilty of murdering 37 individuals because of the evidence presented to the court. He killed 21 people at Cincinnati's Drake Hospital over the course of 4 years. At Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky, Harvey was responsible for the deaths of 13 people in 1970 and 1971. Harvey said that he committed most of his murders out of compassion. "I believed in what I was doing. I was relieving others of their suffering." He once said, "If I ever get sick and have a bunch of tubes in me or I'm on a respirator, I hope someone comes and ends it." Harvey claimed that he felt nearly happy and satisfied after the murders. Harvey's life was extremely complicated, but the killings helped him feel powerful and in charge. Harvey laughed in court as the prosecutor displayed the names of his victims. Deaths of people who knew each other outside of the hospital accounted for 3 of the murders. Donald Harvey was justifiably given the moniker Angel of Death by the media. In an interview, Harvey claimed that he killed up to 70 individuals. On August 18, 1987, Donald Harvey, a 35-year-old nurse's aide, pleaded guilty to 24 charges of murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, and 1 act of felonious assault. About 4 days later, he admitted to the 25 killings for which he was being tried and was given 4 consecutive 20-to-life sentences. Also, Harvey had to pay a $270,000 fine. Harvey admitted to 12 further murders on the Kentucky streets on September 7, 1987, all of which occurred while he was working at Marymount Hospital. His guilty plea and subsequent November sentencing resulted in a sentence of 8 consecutive life terms and an additional 20 years in prison. A few months later, he pleaded guilty to the 3 deaths that occurred outside of the hospital and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms and 3 consecutive terms of 7 to 25 years in prison. As many as 87 homicides have been attributed to Harvey, but he was only convicted of 37. Harvey, who was 64 years old, passed away in prison on March 30th. He did not die by natural causes, unlike his victims. The serial killer was beaten to death in his cell by his fellow inmates.